for every woman, there comes this point where you are confronted by our mortality, right? But as women, we are also confronted by our fertility.
Like, honestly, you are truly an inspiration. Oh. You are. Welcome to Come Back with Erica Cobb, a community of folks like yourselves who are getting ready and staying ready for your next chapter. So you've been following my fertility series. This is a very important, intimate look into not only my journey, but the testimony teachers and guests that I've had on this series, and today is no different. I just want to put a warning out for anyone who may be triggered by the talk of miscarriages during this conversation. My guest today is Oneika Raymond. Now, you already saw how fabulous Oneika is, but Oneika's so fabulous that she's been in here for about 45 minutes and I can't talk to her, because if I talk to her, then I'm going to ruin this entire podcast, because I knew we would never stop talking. Oneika, welcome to Come Back with Erica Cobb.
Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you being here. Let me just tell you, I am fangirling over you. You are so fabulous.
Aww.
You are celebrating an NAACP Image Award nomination. You so deserving. And I'm just going to be completely honest. When I talk about the manifestation in my life, you are living my manifestation, and I love to see it.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, you're doing it so beautifully. You now have a 5-year-old daughter.
I do.
Tell us about your daughter.
Oh, my daughter is, well, she talks nonstop like her mother. And she's just a jubilant little girl who is just so inquisitive and very adventurous and always willing to try new things. And she's a joy, an absolute joy, and she's my bestie, and I'm obsessed with her.
Yeah. Now, does she have you're my bestie too, or are you in the phase where you're just telling her that?
Well, you know what? It's funny because she definitely is a daddy's girl. She has always been a daddy's girl. But as she's getting older, I feel as though I'm bringing her over to my side. And so whether it's because I tell her that she's my bestie all the time, she's very receiving of that. And we're having so much fun together. We love doing girly things like getting our nails done and doing hair. And I'm definitely one of those moms who twins with her daughter. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. Yeah. I'm very unapologetic about it. And I will do it for as long as she will let me.
Well, first of all, apparently the time goes by really fast.
It really does.
But when you say you get your hair done together, you're not just talking about like, yeah, we just go down the street. It's a different type of street. It's a whole different country.
It is.
What was the last experience getting your hair braided?
Oh my goodness. So my daughter recently got her hair braided in Fiji. And prior to that, she got her hair braided in Thailand. And it's been
She's 5.
It's been a whirlwind experience. Let me explain. Let me back up. I mean, we are currently on a 6-month round-the-world trip. So far, we've been to 18 countries on, 3 different continents. And it was one of those things where we were like, you know what? We need to get the heck out of Dodge. Let's do this thing before she has to go to school and she has to be there like on a regular basis. And so we plucked her out of daycare, and we've been traveling ever since. 4.5 months so far. And still we have about 5 weeks to go.
Wow. Like I said, you are just a living manifestation of every dream I've had.
Oh,
I feel encouraged just having you in the room.
Oh, but thank you.
Of course, but truthfully, the road to get to where you are hasn't been a linear journey.
It has not.
And there were wins and losses, joys and pain. You were quite transparent in an article in Oprah magazine talking about your miscarriage.
I was.
And as a result, the world has opened in a different way to you. Can you kind of go through that time with us?
You know, I think for every woman, there comes this point where you are confronted. I mean, we're all confronted by our mortality, right? But as women, we are also confronted by our fertility. And as someone who travels the world for work and for play, and somebody who's an only child, very selfish person, and I say that jokingly, but
Yeah.
also a little bit seriously as well. I didn't know if I wanted to have kids. I didn't know if I wanted to kind of upend my life. I had built this amazing career in travel journalism. The world was truly my oyster. I was traveling weekly all over the place, routinely traveling to over 20 countries a year. And I didn't know what life with a child would look like. To be quite honest with you, I thought it would hold me back because that's what I was told. Those were the limiting beliefs and the projections that were placed upon me. So I'm happily married. My husband is incredible. But he grew up with a sister and very much wanted to take that next step and to grow our family. And so we started trying when I was, 35, 36. Started trying, took a few months. I got pregnant. I was struck by debilitating morning sickness. I felt terrible. I had very negative thoughts. And just when I had wrapped my head around the fact that I was pregnant, just when I started feeling okay with it, I went for an ultrasound at 12 weeks, and they told me that there was no heartbeat. And I had had a miscarriage, which means that the fetus had stopped developing along the way, but my body didn't realize it yet. I was still having symptoms of being pregnant at 12 weeks. And because my body didn't recognize it, I had to have a D&C, which was actually very traumatic.
And we tell our audience what a D&C is.
So a D&C is basically a procedure where they go inside of you and they remove the fetus because the fetus is not expelling for whatever reason on its own. And I had to have one because my body did not realize that the fetus I was carrying inside of me was no longer growing. It wasn't expelling it on its own. And so I had this procedure done. But here's the, I guess, interesting part, or the catch at the time, was that, I'm a travel journalist. I was scheduled to travel internationally 2 days after I found out. And I was going to be traveling to Central America. My doctor advised me, my doctor said, well, it's not a good idea for you to go because you could possibly, your body could realize while you were on this trip and start the miscarriage process while you are overseas in El Salvador. Yeah. So they recommended this D&C and they said, well, it's going to be tough for you mentally, of course, but within 48 hours, physically, you should be okay enough to travel as planned, as scheduled. And so, yeah, it was a very kind of rush decision to have this D&C. Unfortunately, they couldn't put me under, so I was awake for it. They could only do local anesthetic. So as you can imagine, it was very, very traumatizing. I beat myself up over the whole thing. I questioned whether it was because I had felt negatively about this pregnancy in the beginning that I had brought this upon myself. Yeah. But when I was having the D&C, I found out that I had 5 very large fibroids in my uterus. And my OB questioned whether it was due to these fibroids that I was not able to carry this fetus to term. And so I think this is important for 2 reasons. One reason is that we often don't have these conversations about miscarriage, right? We don't openly have these conversations about infertility. And secondly, as Black women, I went on to discover that women of color, particularly Black women, are more prone to have these fibroids, these growths in our uterus, which impacts our fertility, right? And so as distraught as I was after having the procedure, I did manage to get pregnant again and carry my beautiful daughter to term. Love her. She's amazing. I'm obsessed with her. But at the time, shortly before I had her, I did write this article for Oprah magazine because I felt it was really important to share my story.
Yeah.
Because for many months prior, I don't want to say ashamed, but I didn't want to talk about it. And I realized that I wasn't helping anybody. My silence was not helping anyone because the few people I did tell, I was so surprised to find out that many of them had either experienced something similar or they knew of someone who had experienced similarly as well.
You know, Oneika, when I say that you really are like, I'm like, honestly, you are truly an inspiration. Oh. You are. I'm sorry. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm really sorry.
That's fine.
So I think when you said that it's very important that we have these conversations, there were a lot of things that resonated with me and my story and my journey. Because one, especially when you are in a loving relationship and your husband, you know that this is where he is right now. And then as a woman, a Black woman, a professional Black woman, a successful Black woman. And we are told over and over, we need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
That we can provide for ourselves, that we have a plan in place. And that doesn't just go away because you have this very loving, supportive partner. I think there's always something in the back of our minds. I call it the what if effect.
Yeah, we're in survival mode.
Right.
We're always on the offensive.
Right.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And you think some people might feel like, well, I have this very loving, supportive partner. I'm going to be okay. But in some of our minds, we're like, oh no, we need to make sure that if anything happens, apocalypse included.
Yeah. I have plans A through Z.
To take and provide good care for yourself.
100%.
So that thought that you were talking about, am I fully there yet? What about my career? And then something like a miscarriage happens. Immediately, you're like, for me, I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, all this time that people have very openly ridiculed me for talking about wanting to become a mom, but being over 35. Now I'm 40. Were they right? I can't say anything now because if I say something now, then there's going to be this choir of people who are going to say, I told you so. What did you think you were special? Do you not know how biology works? So the idea that you are really showing this journey of and being honest about those thoughts and feelings is so important.
I mean, your ego has to go out the door, right? Everything that you thought you knew about yourself goes out the window when something like this happens.
Yeah.
Because I never would have imagined that this would have been my story. Knock on wood, I've always been in perfect health. I've never had any major accidents or surgeries or anything of that nature. So I just figured I would beat the odds. I actually never even considered odds. Yeah. This was just something that was meant to be.
Well, let me just be very clear. There's a reason why you never considered the odds.
Right.
And the reason why is because I know for a fact, and I haven't known you for that long, that whatever you have put your mind to, you have made happen. I mean,
by hook or by crook.
It seriously. So it is counterintuitive that something else that you're putting your mind to isn't going to come to fruition. I mean, it's a numbers game, and your numbers are high. So I can understand what that feeling is. And that's the other thing that really resonated with me was when you were talking about immediately going back to work.
Oh, yeah.
I went back to work after my miscarriage the next day. I went to work, and then I talked about it publicly like 2 days later.
Not even allowing yourself the opportunity to process the news. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think that is? Because I've thought about this a lot.
I think it's something it's a load that we carry as Black women. There's this inbuilt stoicism, this inborn stoicism that Black women carry, this laborious load, emotional load, where we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable and we press on. And as somebody with Caribbean heritage, I see it in my mother, in my aunties, in the elders, the elder females. It's almost a generational load, a generational burden, where we don't allow ourselves to let our hair down. We're constantly trying to save face. We don't allow ourselves to feel. Or when we do, it's anger and not sadness. There's an outburst of excitement, but not necessarily reflection and melancholy. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we're just conditioned to go, go, go and not feel, because then we're weak, right?
Yeah.
There's that trope of the strong Black woman, of the angry Black woman, right? It's one of the reasons we don't engage in self-care. That's why the self-care movement, or Black women in luxury, that movement, that's why they've become so popular and really been pushed to the forefront as of late, because we realize that we cannot continue in the ways that we've known and done for generations, right? So that's what it is.
Yes, and.
Yeah.
Yes, and. Because let me tell you, when it comes to Black women in luxury or resource, I wasn't comfortable initially talking about my IVF journey because it said something about my financial situation. It othered me in a different way.
Right.
And that was something that in the beginning I struggled with. And at that time, I shouldn't have been even thinking about that, because I should have been thinking,
focusing on yourself. Yeah.
Let me try to have a baby.
Yeah.
But instead I'm like, well, I'm doing this. Okay, well, and then finally I was like, you know what? This is what it is.
Yeah.
I feel very grateful to be. And then I'm thinking, who else is making concessions for trying to expand their families, utilizing every resource that they have?
Again, it comes from this strong Black woman trope, this fertile, strong as an ox Black woman trope. And you want to save face. You don't want to show people that you're lacking.
Yeah.
Right? In quotations, because that's absolutely not the case. But I think that that's something generationally that we carry. And it's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate.
Well, we have opportunities to change it for the next generation.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. This is so important, this dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so you talked about, wanting to get back to work. Your recovery time was how long?
I mean, within 48 hours, I was on a plane. I was bleeding profusely, obviously. I was overnight padding it. I was doing all the things. And I remember we were in El Salvador, and I remember lying in bed, crying and crying and crying, but still soldiering on, because I thought, well, let's get to it. Let's get back to normal. And so I told my mother, obviously. I told some close friends. But other than that, nobody knew, and nobody knew for months and months and months. And you know what's so crazy, Erica, is that I even didn't feel comfortable revealing until I was already well into my next pregnancy, my pregnancy with my daughter, because I didn't want anybody to say, poor Oneika. I didn't want pity because I felt like that would make me feel even worse. You know when you're grieving something already, and so, oh, I'm so sorry. That, oh, forget it. No.
Yeah.
No, that would make me, I would lose my ish. So it was just better to soldier on and kind of pretend it didn't happen, and just to move forward. And I guess to a degree, I felt like a failure. And so I didn't want to share the loss until I had already secured another win.
The win.
Right. You get it. Yeah.
And when that win doesn't happen immediately,
it's soul crushing.
That's when those decisions have to be made. Like for me, I was like, okay, well, everything seemingly is kind of just not going in that way.
You're in a holding pattern.
Yeah. So I was like, I think I just finally got on social media and said, okay, so I had 2 miscarriages, my dog died, and I lost my job. It's kind of like, here is the true reality of it. But also being able to say that was a win for me.
100%. It's freeing and empowering.
Completely falling apart. So yeah, I do. Oh gosh, girl, I understand.
So much to say, right?
Okay, let's dive back into this, because the trip that you went on after your miscarriage was supposed to be your baby moon.
It was supposed to be my baby moon. And as I wrote in the article, I will always remember that trip as the baby moon that never was. And it's really painful to look at that trip. I often don't think about that trip. I don't look at any of the pictures. I mean, obviously, I post all my little, my cute little pictures on social media. And I definitely love a throwback. But I never throw back to that time. It was not a happy trip. I feel bad for my husband because I was a wreck.
Where were you?
We went to El Salvador and Mexico. It was a long trip as well. It was like 2 weeks. And it was, I think the drama of it all was kind of like, I felt like I had, when somebody pies you in the face? It was kind of this negative aha moment, because in my mind, I had all these visions of us having, these celebratory frolics on the beach, hand in hand, nuclear family forming. And then instead I was crying into my fruit punch, like on the beach. You know what I mean? So it was not a happy time. In the end, I'm glad that we went, because I was able to attempt to focus my attention elsewhere. And it was nice being somewhere where nobody knew me.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about travel, is the ability to just be somebody else, somewhere else, and someone else. Yeah. And so nobody knew me. So, if I lost it at the dinner table, well, I'll never see these people again. They don't know who I am.
No, exactly.
Right? They don't even speak my language. So
yeah. I'm curious about your relationship with your husband during that time. Were there any actions, or can you think of anything that stands out to you that were like surprising, or just a shift of anything between the two of you during that time?
It's so funny, because I think of the dynamic I have with my husband as sort of like the pit bull golden retriever thing. Like, he is so incredibly supportive of me. He's so measured. He's so strong. He's one of those people where he may not necessarily say much, but what he does say is really impactful. And in that time, obviously he was grieving. right? But he really allowed me the space to grieve because he realized how physically, not just emotionally, but how physically traumatic that experience was. Mm-hmm. And so he allowed me to feel. He was just enduringly supportive. And I knew that I could just fall apart and he would pick me up. And I think at that point, so many people, and I've been married at this point for over 10 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I think having, being married for so long and being in a successful marriage mm-hmm. for so long and a happy marriage for so long, I think the key to our marriage, our happy marriage, is that we're really best friends, right? And we can do and be anything, anybody to each other. There's no posturing.
Yeah.
There are no illusions. We are just ourselves. Mm-hmm. I am able to be myself at my best and at my worst. And so just knowing that he's such a calming force and that he was always there. I mean, he's always been there. Mm-hmm. And so that was really comforting during that time. And obviously that intensified given the fraught nature of what had occurred.
Yeah. Oftentimes partners are left out of these conversations. Mm-hmm. And what I thought about when I had 2 miscarriages was coming out of the bathroom to the bed, and my husband had put puppy pads all down my side of the bed because I was too scared to lay down. Because when you're expelling a pregnancy, it is very traumatic, and there's sometimes
you're passing,
just a lot. And I just remember him being so like he's a nurturing person anyway, but like he was so nurturing that I almost felt guilty because I knew that he was grieving too, right. But he wanted the focus to be on me because I mean, as you said, it's very physical, but me trying to negotiate or like navigate my grief and physical pain with his emotional grief. And I don't know if there's a perfect science to something like that. But hearing you talk about, first of all, I love the way that you speak about your husband. I love to hear when a queen is being cared for, something that we are deserving of.
Oh, 100%.
And just showing that and speaking about that, like it gives me a lot of joy. So
I think it's so important. And again, I think even now, like having a child and seeing how he is with her, because you have to understand, I didn't see very many healthy relationships growing up. My mother was very much a single mother. My dad was kind of around, kind of not. I didn't have that stable father figure. Maybe he was there on Thanksgiving, but not there on Christmas. There on New Year's Eve, but not there on Valentine's Day. It was one of those sorts of things. And not having healthy relationships, like, male, female, or intimate partner relationships, not having that modeled to you as you're growing up during your formative years, that absolutely impacts you when it's time for you to embark on a relationship, a love relationship or an intimate relationship of your own. So I think that has made me all the more grateful, adamant that I want that sort of relationship for myself, that I not only want that sort of relationship, but I am owed and I deserve that sort of relationship. Yeah.
First of all, I commend you for knowing that. That's a hurdle in itself.
It is.
It really is. It speaks a lot about you. I will say I resonate with some of those feelings and emotions because while my parents are very much still married, My parents, I would classify my parents as having one of those business type marriages. So they weren't overly affectionate, and my father started splitting his time to build his business in another state. So there was a time where he was only home on the weekends. And as a result, and I've been quite open and honest with this, my father and I had a very strained relationship. And I was quite resentful. And that really impacted all of my relationships. But what I knew was, as we mended our relationship, we have a much better relationship now. I went to therapy when I knew that I wanted to get pregnant, because I was very concerned that if I had a little girl, I don't know how I would emotionally handle seeing something that I wasn't afforded
that you
in
did
that
not
way,
have.
because I knew that my husband would be like, I'm a dad girl, I'm a daddy's girl, and I didn't know. And honestly, I think that's a part of the reason why it took me a little longer, because I didn't want to have any resent. Like, I don't want to resent. Like, why would I resent my daughter? But that happens. Like, women have children, men have children, and they're quite resentful of their children.
It's so wild how we revert. Actually, maybe revert is not the best word. It's so wild how we still have that little girl inside of us at the end of the day, right? That little Erica still is within you, still feeling, still wanting. And so I understand it. I do understand that sentiment of being like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't have that. And that's unfair. Like, I'm happy for you, but I'm sad for myself.
Yeah.
Right? That does something for me. I feel some sort of way about it. Yeah, that's a real feeling.
I mean,
girl.
no one, because you don't want to be like, oh, if I had a daughter, I might be jealous of her. Like, that's like, I'm the wrong thing to say, but it's like,
but it's a real thing.
There's some truth to it. And if you are brave enough to just be honest with those types of feelings and emotions, then you're also courageous enough to do something about it. Like, you're fixing the problem before it becomes a problem.
I love this era that we're in of self-care and recognizing the need for therapy, right? Because again, generationally, our parents, forget it. My mom is very Jamaican, and that was just not a thing. It's still not a thing.
Well, it was considered weak.
Exactly.
Or you can't tell other people your business.
That, precisely. I can hear my mom saying it in my ear right now. Precisely that.
And now we're like, well, everybody knows our business.
Everybody knows the business.
Just go on Instagram.
Get on the IG stories, friends. We're bringing you along.
So I might as well tell my business to somebody who can help, okay?
But, this culture of sharing is so important. And look how it's connected all of us, right? We wouldn't all know each other if it wasn't for the internet, if it wasn't for social media. So, I mean, obviously, it has its disadvantages.
Right. Well, we don't talk about that side of the street. Not that part of the neighborhood. No. We're talking about our neighborhood.
Yes.
People who are nice and loving. And we're like, oh, I see you. And I see myself in you.
Right.
We see each other.
Right. Right.
So speaking of community in general, being transparent with your story definitely creates community.
It does.
Writing this article, Oprah Magazine, what was your goal going into it versus what was the manifestation of the things that happened after?
I mean, look, it was therapeutic for me to write about it. So it was selfishly for me as well. But again, here's the thing. I share a lot online, but a lot of it is so curated. The pretty travel pictures, and it's curated. I'm an artist. I'm sensitive about my ish, right?
Yeah, no, that's,
creative.
But that's the thing.
Right.
You're an artist. This is your work.
Exactly. That's the portfolio. That's the aesthetic. That's the expression of, my creativity and all these things. And so I think in writing that article, the goal was also to be a little bit more raw, pull back the curtain a little bit, and to also platform a topic that isn't spoken about enough. And if it is, it's not coming from somebody who looks like me necessarily, right? Or we'll share the miscarriage or the infertility, but not the ambivalence about getting pregnant in the first place, right? So I wanted to show those parallels, right? You can be reticent or unsure about embarking on this journey, particularly as a successful, career-minded woman, and then be absolutely devastated when it doesn't work out the way you thought it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm feeling that. Especially because there is something, and you talked about, being curated on social media. We talked about that side of the street when it comes to social media, the side we don't want to cross to. But those voices, especially when you're in a vulnerable state, become so loud.
Oh, yeah.
So just the idea of like, I know that my tragedy is going to be the best part of someone else's day and not wanting to give them that. To me, it's a self-preservation, but it's also a preservation for what will become of my legacy, which I believe will still manifest in children. So protecting all of those things is like the first step of motherhood, even if you haven't had children before.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, goodness. You are listening to Come Back with Erica Cobb. I'm speaking with Oneika Raymond. I mean, there's so many things about your life. You're an artist, curator, digital content creator, an author, a mother, a wife. Holistically, when you're looking at your life, what would and this is going to be a tough question because I'm like, sum up your life in 2 sentences or less. But what would be your legacy thus far in your life? Because I think Maya Angelou said to Oprah, you don't know what your legacy will be until you die. Like something like that.
One of my taglines has always been that I want to encourage women, particularly Black women, to live their best lives at home and abroad. I want them to try that something new, whether it's a new destination, a new food, a new activity. I don't want them to care what other people will think. I pivoted careers. I was an educator for 10 years. And in my mid-30s, I thought, let me try something else, right? I've been doing what I've been doing now for, 8 years, 9 years. I'm turning 43 this year.
It's a good year.
It's a good year, right? Are you 82 as well?
I'm 81.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well,
so
we intersect for a little bit, right? Good year. Good couple of years. So I think, and this is something that I think about from time to time, right? What do I want to emit, right? What do I want? What message do I want to emit to the masses, right? And I want people to love life. I want them to try new things. And I want them to not be afraid of what other people think. And so everything I've done with my life thus far, the major career pivot, the traveling around the world, the taking 2 adult gap years to travel around the world, kind of leaving everything behind, leaving everything askance, and just kind of doing my own thing and blocking out the noise of what other people think about it. I think that's what I want my overarching legacy to be. She lived despite what others wanted. She lived for herself. And that is my greatest wish for everyone else, especially the Black immigrant woman like myself. I think that's who I'm always talking to in my content. Growing up in an immigrant family has had such an impact on the way I see the world, in the ways in which I navigate the world. So not just as a Black woman, but also as a Black immigrant woman. That's had such an imprint. And so I think when I'm creating, when I'm crafting a message, it's always for that person who's like me.
Yeah. So I'm not even supposed to be going in this direction, but I find I seriously could talk to you forever. I feel like what you said, everything you have said has been very important. But during this time in this climate in general, I think that people really miss the mark when we're having conversations about, I'm just going to say this, we can step on it and then we can keep moving. But when we're having conversations about DEI, immigration, and people are so confused as if because you're a person of color or because you're a woman or because you have immigrated to this country that certain things are being given to you, but you are talking about your life and your legacy in a way that people who aren't attached to what they have in terms of privilege now don't even think about. And that's why they're missing the mark.
Yeah.
You have an actual tangible attachment to it.
Oh,
and
sure.
You're emitting because you know that there's someone right next to you, right behind you. There is a line of people who are absorbing this because they know that you are giving them the gems and the playbook. And because they've seen you do it in real time, they have an attachment to this is where she started and now she's over here. So I think those are the stories, your stories are the stories that people really don't understand to even point to why is this successful? Where are these success rates coming from? How is she able to make these things happen? And the whole time you've been living out loud in public and sharing.
For sure.
You just don't know how to consume the information because I always look at things like, I'm taking you as an example, like, that was a very generous gem. Thank you. That's a very generous gem. Thank you. I feel like I'm leaving gems for people who are thinking that they might want to do something that I'm doing.
Here's the thing. You don't know what you don't know, right? And a lot of things that we do know are informed by our life experiences. So as much as, and I hate the idea of the oppression Olympics, right? We're not going to do that. But I do find it interesting that when I travel to certain places, there's a certain amount of American privilege that I have, right? You pop out that blue passport, for the sake of argument, I have a Canadian passport. I'm an immigrant to the US, but you pop out that American or Canadian passport, or you speak with this accent. I mean, we code switch. We know how to code switch, right? But I speak with this accent abroad, and immediately I have privileges over somebody. If I spoke in my Jamaican accent, I have immediate privilege when I speak in my standard North American dialect, right? And having been able to travel to a very large percentage of the world, I've seen that in action. I've seen that come into play, having the bust down as opposed to rocking the dreadlocks, wearing the head wrap as opposed to rocking the Air Force Ones. There are levels to this, right? There are levels to the privilege. And so in the back of my mind, I think I'm always aware of the different things that people, or the different barriers to entry for whatever thing it is that people are going to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spit it out.
Yes. Oneika, you're gonna have to come back.
I'm gonna come back.
Because
We're gonna do this again.
when we talk about there's different levels to this. You're really saying the quiet parts out loud because, I mean, honestly, when people are like, oh, you shouldn't be judged based on, what you wear, whatever. And I have this conversation with my husband, who is a white man from Canada.
Yes.
You can't just, he will try to go to a nice restaurant with shorts or waistband, type.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is obscene levels of privilege.
Yes.
The idea that you would want to walk out the door looking like that, like to go, I would never be willing to do that. It's like, you could. It just, you care what people think.
Because when he does
service.
it, it's endearing. And when you do it, it's some sort of affront. Like it's offensive.
Yeah,
right?
because if he does it, then he must really be successful.
Yeah.
If he walked in somewhere looking like that, because he has it like that.
Yeah.
And if I do it, it's going to ruin. And I tell him all the time, I'm very strategic with what I wear, when I'm wearing it, and what I'm doing.
Context.
And it's more so, it's not that I care about what everybody thinks of me. Sometimes I just don't want to have my day ruined.
Exactly. It's just
by some ignorance.
Exactly. It's just ease.
Yeah.
That's what I want all of us Black women to do. I want us to live lives of ease.
Yeah.
So even now they're trying to call, Miss Harris to the fore. I'm like, let sister girl relax. She doesn't need to be anybody's heroine.
Yeah.
Right? Life of ease.
Yeah. I love the soft life for the Black woman.
Yes.
I really do. And let's talk about it in every capacity, because getting back to, in terms of maternal health, obviously our maternal health mortality rates are higher, the highest, than any other woman. Did that at all affect your pregnancy, your birth plan?
Oh.
How was that? And I'm going to call it self-care because you were giving other examples of self-care.
I mean, definitely. I had so much monitoring, and I realize this now. I remember one of my best friends who lives in Canada, we had an overlap. So we were pregnant kind of around the same time. And I remember I was going for so much monitoring, I was in tandem. I was going to my OB's office, and then I was also going to the hospital. I was living in New York City at the time. So I would be in Mount Sinai West, and then I would, at Columbus Circle, and then going to my my OB/GYN at, where was she located? Upper West Side. And I would be going like twice a week and doing all of this testing. And I realized that from my friend, that wasn't, I was like, when's the last time you went to, you did a scan? 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks, and you're not seeing, you're in like week 26 of your pregnancy. What do you mean you're not going for, however many weeks to see your doctor, to be monitored? So it was a lot of additional monitoring. I had the time, luckily, I pretty much work for myself. So that's a privilege to be able to not be affected, to be able to take the time to take care of my health during pregnancy. And so, I didn't do anything lavish per se, but I was very forgiving of myself. And I was very protective of my energy. So there were some friendships during that time that I had to table. Right? That's something that we don't talk about either, right?
Yeah.
There were people that would raise my blood pressure, that, there were things going on there. And so I had to table certain relationships and actually avoid people during those months of my pregnancy, because I didn't want the negativity, especially since I was dead set on on making sure that my daughter made it to term.
Yeah.
So I didn't want any negative energy to impact that, because I had even said to my husband, I'm like, if it doesn't work out this time, then I'm not doing this again, because emotionally it was just too much for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say that there were people who couldn't be in your life during a time, have any of those people, have you resumed relationships with them, or?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think, it's funny. A lot of people, or I've told a lot of people that something in me changed when I had my daughter. And I had my daughter basically at the same time the pandemic happened. And I stopped having a lot of time for people and issues and things like that that didn't benefit me, or, the snarky comments or the unsupportive acts. I just kind of cast those to the side. I didn't have time. I mean, in the early days of the pandemic, we're in the throes of the pandemic. It was a life and death situation. Like, we didn't know what the next day would hold. And so raising a newborn, I didn't have time. I couldn't deal. Right. And a lot of those people and things I just never picked back up.
Yeah. It's interesting because we talk about, people come into your life for a reason, season, or lifetime, but we never talk about when that season ends and what that reason was, So that's why I was curious.
Yeah.
It's because I can completely understand all of this changes you. Your sensitivities, what you'll tolerate, what you won't tolerate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about, because obviously you've traveled all over the world, and I'm curious about your perception of pregnancy and maternal health in other countries versus the U.S. Is there anything that you've experienced or seen?
So it's so funny. I have a reel, like a post on social media that's gone viral, where I compare maternity leave, the number of weeks of maternity leave women in other countries or parents in other countries get versus the U.S. And it's laughable. First of all, I grew up in Canada. I grew up in Toronto. And standard maternity leave when I was growing up was 12 months. And now it's basically extended to 18 months. My husband's European. He's from Germany. I believe they have, I think it's 14 months. And it can be split between the mother and the father as they'd like. And so in so many different countries, there is a real, I guess, maternity leave or parental leave, I guess you could say, is a priority, and not in the U.S. And so as I've traveled around the world, with my daughter, of course, as well, I really have been taking note of how other parents parent in different places. In Northern Europe, for example, or in a lot of Western Europe as well, you'll see the father take a more active role, right? It's not surprising to see parental leave split equally between the mother and the father.
Yeah.
Whereas here, that's still taboo, right? The stay-at-home dad. What is that? Girl, he's taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Isn't it crazy how that works? Like,
right?
Yeah.
No, he's just like an active parent who would equally love to spend as much time with their his child, raising his child as
their formative years.
Right. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting how people in other countries parent.
Yeah.
What some of the societal and social norms are with regards to that.
Well, as I mentioned, my husband's Canadian, and he was working for a Canadian company at the time. And so I asked, like, oh, well, will you be taking the full year? Because he has the option of taking the full year. Yeah. And he was like, oh, let me check. And then he started working for an American company. I was like, did you switch companies? Because I asked you that question. No.
Right.
No, he's very into this whole thing. Funny. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely, it's shameful the way that, families are not prioritized in a country that we hear family first all the time.
Yeah, crazy.
And how little mothers are supported. I mean, there's so much that needs to change about our systems. But I'm curious, in terms of this conversation, if there is anything you would like to leave my comeback community with or share with us.
A quote that I always feel is kind of like my modus operandi is just do it. Do it scared. Just do it. I would rather regret doing something than not doing something, right? And I feel as though that has kind of been my guiding principle in life. So from the very first trip abroad that I took back in 2003, I moved to France, sight unseen, for a year, to switching careers at the age of 34 because I had aspirations of becoming a TV host and on-air talent and travel journalist, to leaving it all behind in 2021 to travel the world for 18 months with my husband and my then 18-month-old, to then leaving everything behind again to do a 6-month-long world tour or around the world trip with my husband and my 5-year-old, right? I'm someone who, I think I just activate, right? I just do things because I would rather regret having done something than sit with the what if.
Yeah.
And so if I had any lasting message to impart to the comeback family, I would say just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it, because on the other side of that fear, there could be something really great.
Yes.
And in terms of travel, you can always come home again.
Yeah.
You can always come back. You can always come back.
Yes,
Look,
you can come back. Oneika, first of all, you are so amazing.
Oh, thank you.
You are so amazing. And I see a lot of myself in you. I feel like a very kindred connection. And I want people to really understand, like, when you are saying, just do it, there's always, I know what the response is because I hear it so often. Yeah. Well, of course you could do that.
Of course,
Well, it must be nice. Well, if I had, and you're putting yourself into all of these situations that you think apply to your story. But the truth is, and I'll speak for myself, and you can say if I'm right or wrong about you, but the truth is, no one ever asks, how did she know? How was that the way that her troubleshooting wound up for her?
Yeah.
Where was she at when she made those decisions to say, I would rather regret doing something than not doing something? Yeah. When did that regret happen, that you regretted not doing something? Because to me, that's the unspoken piece.
Right.
And that could be where someone who's listening or who's viewing is right now. Yeah. So when you're saying just do it, like, figure it out, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Figure it out.
So often we see somebody's chapter 20 without having read or viewed the previous 19 chapters, right? Yeah. Every action has a reaction. Every action has a catalyst. And so I guess I encourage people to just try. We have all these limiting beliefs. But for me, I really believe in this idea of, if you see it, you can be it. So if you're an example, or if there's an example, there's an opportunity for you to get there because it exists. Yeah.
I love it. Oneika Raymond, let me just say, we have seen your glory, but thank you for sharing your story, sis.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been amazing. Tell our comeback community what you're working on, where we can find you, all the things.
So I am currently of no fixed address. Actually, I don't know when this is going to air, but I'm currently traveling the world with my little family. We are 4.5 months into a 6-month journey.
Amazing.
And so we're living, loving, laughing, learning. And I am exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. So follow me on the socials, Oneika Raymond.
Yes.
On all of the platforms, and yeah, just living life and doing things, and just enjoying everything. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, you're a shining example of we can have it all, because I really think that you're just. I cried for the first 5 minutes of this interview. You're such an inspiration. Thank you for spending a little time with us on Come Back with Erica Cobb.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to coming back.
Yes, because I'm so sorry you're going to have to share that 6-month itinerary.
Okay.
I'm
travel
gonna try. Yes, I'm going to try to follow in your footsteps.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And to my Comeback community, you can continue to follow along with this fertility series and the comeback journey on comeback.tv. Thanks for watching.